Ah, Batman. A franchise that seems to effortlessly achieve staggering highs and terrifying lows. Just a quick glance at Batman movie history and you genuinely struggle to believe that a movie as incredible as Batman Begins or The Dark Knight could possibly belong to the same franchise as such dogshit entries like Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. Indeed, the only consistent thing about Batman is his inconsistency. And that doesn't just bode for the movie franchises, because the game series fare little better. There are some genuinely excellent Batman games out there. Arkham Asylum on PS3, 360 and PC, for example, is the epitome of a Batman game done right. Free-flowing combat, excellent mix of puzzles, exploration and investigating, an excellent story, really Gotham-esque atmosphere and environments, and a genuinely excellent game. Even going way back to the halcyon days of the Nintendo NES, Batman the video game for Nintendo's 8-bit machine was an incredibly tight and solid action platformer. It was tough, sure, but it had some great cutscenes for the time, and it was very much up there with classics like Ninja Gaiden. There was also the Batman Telltale series, exploring a deep narrative within the universe, widely lauded for its mature themes and outstanding story. But for every Arkham Asylum and Batman the video game, there's Batman games that are, well, I can't dress this up nicely, folks. They're fucking terrible. Batman Forever on the Super Nintendo took the mid-90s craze for terrible cosplayed motion-captured digitized sprites and the game engine from Mortal Kombat and tried to make a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up out of it. Suffice to say, it was fucking awful. And I mean, truly fucking awful. There was a falsely advertised Amiga version of Batman Returns that turned out to be nothing like it was promised to be. There was Batman Dark Tomorrow on the GameCube, which remains one of the very worst stealth games ever conceived. And there was the truly fucking abysmal Batman Beyond Return of the Joker on the Nintendo 64. A game so completely and utterly fucking awful, it made the notoriously bad Superman 64 look like a Game of the Year contender. So yeah, Batman video games, like the movies, are wildly inconsistent. But there are gems to be found if you look hard enough for them. Today, my friends, we're talking about a Super Nintendo Batman game. A Super Nintendo Batman game based on one of the very best Batman movies. This, my friends, is Batman Returns. Now, you might or might not be aware, but there's a bunch of different Batman Returns games. Batman Returns for the Master System is a 2D platform brawler, somewhat similar to the excellent NES Batman game I mentioned just now. It was developed by Aspect and published by Sega, as was the Game Gear version, which was nearly identical to the Master System version. There was a Mega Drive version, which was also a 2D side-scrolling platform brawler, though very different to the 8-bit versions in both design and aesthetics, and it follows the movie plot a little bit more closely. That version was developed by Malibu Interactive, published by Sega, as was the Mega CD version, which is basically identical to the Mega Drive version, except it has a bunch of 3D driving levels to show off the power of the Mega CD, and a much better soundtrack thanks to the Mega CD's CD quality audio capabilities. There's a completely different PC version, which is a point-and-click game, way more focused on the detective element of Batman. There's an Amiga version, which is an absolute, utterly fucking broken, shambolic sack of shit mess of a side-scrolling platform combat game. There's a totally different Atari Lynx version of Batman Returns, which is one of the most brutally difficult video games you will ever play, especially in a game with one life and zero bastard continues. And there's an NES version, which is a TMNT arcade / Double Dragon style 2D brawler with some brief vehicle levels. And to top it all off, I'm not going to talk about any of those versions, and instead focus on the Super Nintendo version of Batman Returns, which of course is completely different to all of those other versions that I just rattled through. Batman Returns on the Super NES is a 2D side-scrolling brawler, with you getting to control the Dark Knight as you beat the living shit out of a bunch of goons, thugs and reprobates on your way to stop the evil Penguin and his quest to kidnap every firstborn son in Gotham City. The game closely follows the plot of the movie and includes some rather striking SNES-style cutscenes of stills from the film. Back in the early 90s, these side-scrolling brawlers were big business. From Streets of Rage to Final Fight, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to The Simpsons, brawler games were popular and successful, and it seemed Konami decided that genre was a decent fit for a Batman game. After all, the Caped Crusader is all in favour of swift, vigilante-style justice, so it made perfect sense to have him engaged in a game primarily around combat, and of course with a handful of gizmos and gadgets thrown in for good measure. At its heart, Batman Returns on the SNES sits nicely into all the usual tropes of the side-scrolling beat-em-ups of the time. Left-to-right scrolling? Check. Boss fights at the end of the level? Check. Ground attack, aerial attack, and grab mechanics? Check. Obligatory elevator level? Check. So far, so good. One of the nice things Batman Returns brought to the table, however, was the enhancements to the grab mechanics. While walking into an enemy in order to grab them, allowing you to get some free hits in is nothing new, and neither is the ability to slam or throw the enemies into other enemies. Batman Returns allowed you to interact with segments of the background by pressing up and throw, sending the enemies into walls, windows, benches, lampposts, or any other part of the background scenery that was an interactive object. Not only this, but if you threw them while another enemy was between you and the wall, that second enemy would also go along for the ride straight into the wall, allowing you to damage multiple enemies at the same time. Not only that, once you grabbed an enemy, you weren't locked into a single place either. As Batman, you could actually walk around the screen while holding an enemy. And if you're quick enough to grab another enemy, you can hold one in each hand. And then, by pressing the attack button, you can smash their heads together, causing some decent damage on both enemies. A novel idea, I grant you, but there is something intrinsically satisfying about mullering heads together. And look, if you've got a sibling, you'll likely have had your parents say to you at some point in your life that they would, quote, bang the pair of your heads together, and this move is exactly that. There's also a few other different attacks you can perform as Batman. By pressing attack and jump together, for example, Batman swings his cape around, causing damage in both directions, although this is in exchange for a little bit of your health bar. It's like an instant get out of trouble move, one that you use sparingly, mainly when you're about to take more damage than the small health sacrifice to pull it off costs. It's the same mechanic ripped straight from Final Fight or Streets of Rage 2 or countless other side-scrolling beat-em-ups from the time, but hey, if it ain't broke, why bother fixing it? There's also infinite batarangs that you can throw at enemies, and while these don't necessarily damage them, they will stun weaker and some ranged enemies, giving you the time to relocate Batman to another part of the screen in order to be better positioned. And of course, you can use them to stun them briefly in order to walk right up to them and punch them in the fucking face. Batman also has a grappling gun, which can be used to swing from one side of the screen towards the other, knocking over enemies in the way and dealing some damage to them. A move more useful for removing yourself from incoming enemies than it is an offensive move, as it also saps a small bit of your own health bar for some inexplicable reason. Batman can also block with the L or R shoulder buttons, useful against weak attacks but less so against the heavy attacks from tougher enemies or bosses. There are moments in the games where enemies chuck exploding engines at you or shoot bazookas at you or penguins shoot missiles at you, and the block mechanic is useful in these moments too. While holding block and pressing the X button unleashes the test tube, which acts basically like a smart bomb, turning the screens all kind of white, causing heavy damage to every enemy. These test tubes are incredibly useful in boss fights, and to be honest, I tended to save mine for these purposes, but you can use them when and how you like, and you can collect more of them throughout the levels. Now, the biggest criticism labelled at side-scrolling 2D brawlers like this is the same for pretty much every single game in the genre: repetitiveness. And to an extent, it's true. It is a valid complaint. As much fun as beating the fuck out of everyone and everything on the screen is, if the game drags on too long without offering anything new, of course it's going to grow a little stale at times towards the end. Batman Returns is actually one of the few games in the genre that actually takes note of this and does it slightly differently. You see, the game was developed and published by Konami, and despite them being something of a shell of their former selves today, it's important to remember just how good Konami were back in the SNES days. Axelay, Super Castlevania 4, Turtles in Time, Pop and Twinbee, Sunset Riders, Super Bomberman, Tiny Toon Adventures, Gradius 3, Zombies Ate My Neighbors, Contra 3, or Super Pro Protector. This is the quality benchmark that used to be associated with Konami in the 16-bit era. They were one of the most respected developers of the generation, and there was always a sense of quality and anticipation you came to expect as soon as you saw that Konami splash screen. And for their first foray into the 2D brawler genre, Konami seemed to understand those complaints about variety, and they set about to do something about it. There's moments in the game where the depth perspective of the standard brawler shifts, and it becomes a flat 2D side-scroller. In these sections, the Batarang becomes the main weapon. The game introduces platforming segments using the grappling gun to traverse the environments. It feels like a nod to the classic Batman game on the NES, as even though the viewpoint shifts only slightly, it is suddenly a very different game. Later in the adventure, they mix it up even further by adding a Batmobile stage, clearly just showing off Mode 7, racing through the streets of Gotham as you launch machine gun bullets at a seemingly endless convoy of red triangle bikers and vans, who launch missiles and attempt to ram the Batmobile to cause damage. It certainly breaks up the action, even if these segments are infrequent and fairly fleeting. The game isn't especially long, 7 stages of varying length, and it can be easily finished in 45 minutes or so. One thing that did strike me, having spent some time playing through Streets of Rage and Final Fight recently, is the difficulty. It's certainly a step up from those games. Even on easy, you're limited in the number of lives as well as the number of continues to finish it. Health pickups feel far more sparse than other games in the genre, and I did find myself playing somewhat more defensively than I would have done in Streets of Rage, for example. Each level, shock horror, has a boss at the end, most of which are just a bit more tanky enemies with big health bars who have more powerful attacks that can drain your health pretty quickly if you lose focus. But then there's fucking Catwoman fights. Honestly, she's an absolute pain in the ass. Quick and agile, and rarely given the opportunity to smack her about a bit. She's got a dual whip attack that can cripple your health bar, as well as having the occasional tendency to trap you in the corner or at the side of the screen, developing an almost superhuman ability to time her attacks framed perfectly to stop you from ever being able to counter her. Alongside her and the Penguin scraps, it's by no means a walkover to complete, and like I said, it's a noticeable step up in difficulty compared to many other games of its ilk. My other main gripe with Batman Returns on the SNES is the lack of two-player mode. Now look, I understand Final Fight didn't have one either, but Streets of Rage did, and it was an infinitely better game for it. Turtles in Time did, and that also rings true. I don't know if it was technical limitations, whether it was a conscious choice because of the plot of the movie, or whether Konami just, forgot about the idea of two people playing with each other. But whatever the reason, it isn't there. It's not a deal breaker, but it would have been nice to have. But on the whole, I really enjoyed Batman Returns. The audio is really good, clearly inspired by Danny Elfman's stellar work on the original movie soundtrack, and there's some proper meaty sound effects for the combat. Graphically it looks good, it's very in tune with the movie again, the Christmas vibes, the use of light and dark and purveying thematic touch points from the movie. The plot follows along well, the right scenes have been taken from the movie to make the game, it handles well, it's responsive, the collision detection works as it should. I mean, it's got some frustrating moments. The platforming section with the grappling gun is likely to swallow a bunch of your lives first time round, and some of the boss fights, fucking Catwoman, feels slightly unfair, but on the whole I had a really good time with it, particularly the variety of moves you can pull together in the standard combat areas. It's probably not the best example of the 2D brawler genre, but it is an incredibly solid example of it. And not only that, it's a Batman game that is definitively not shit. In fact, I'd probably put it up there as one of the best Batman games there is. Batman Returns is one of my favourite Batman movies, so to have at least one version of the game come close to doing it justice is great to see. So if you're a Batman fan, or a fan in general of the 2D brawler genre, there's a lot to like here, and I'd say it's well worth an hour of your time. Thanks again for watching. Please let me know in the comments your thoughts on Batman Returns. Do you agree with me that the SNES version is the best version to play? Perhaps you were a Sega version fan. How many times did you fall off the fucking building in pursuit of Catwoman? I want to know. If you enjoyed the video, please do consider dropping a like, or even a free subscription to my channel just to help me make that push to YouTube partner. And if you have a favourite retro game you'd like me to do the retrospective treatment on, let me know, and I might just make it. Shout out to Vanessinia91 Pucker for the suggestion of Batman Returns, as much as I was cursing your name during the bastard Catwoman fights. Until next time, be awesome to each other, and I unconditionally love your hecking faces.